guys, Christina here, and today I have a look for you at the books we read last month, which was March 2020. If you're new here, we're a homeschooling family of 7, so we read a lot of books as part of our curriculum, but we also enjoy reading. So I'm going to jump right in with the read alouds that we did. So last month I shared that we were reading A Coal Miner's Bride. So we finished this book. I think it gave a really good depiction of what life was like at that time, especially how harsh life was for immigrants, but also for those who worked in the coal mines and kind of in that community of the coal mines as well, how difficult it was. So that was a really good read. I would recommend. Then we moved on to this book here, The Scarlet Oak by Cornelia Meigs, I think is how you say that. It's from the Good and the Beautiful library. It's about a family that comes back from France to live with their grandfather in New Jersey, and their neighbor is Joseph Bonaparte, Napoleon's brother. And it kind of has some different other side stories to it, but that's kind of the main story. And one of the boys ends up working at Joseph Bonaparte's home. Kind of mixed feelings about this book. My kids said probably 3, maybe a 4 out of 5 star. I think it gave some good information, some background, some history about the time and what life was like. But for me, it felt kind of disjointed. Like some parts were very, very well described and very thorough, whereas other parts were just like a sentence or two when there could have been a lot more description in it. There is some action at the end of the book, but it is a slower read, so I'm not sure that I would read it again, but maybe, I don't know. Then we moved on to Toussaint l'Ouverture, which is more of a picture book about the Haitian Revolution, and so we read that one. And then we went on to this one here, which is Dosia, Bannock Girl and the Handcart Pioneers by Kenneth Thomasma? Not sure how you say that. It is part of a series of books. I'll show you the inside. There's a few little pictures in here. So it's a story about a girl who is crossing the plains with the pioneers of that time. It was the Mormon church or the LDS church. And she gets separated from her family. And this girl, who also happens to be separated from her tribe, Dosia, they find each other and it's a story of their survival. I found the book, the language is very simple and the sentence structure is very simple, which for me I found a little frustrating to read. I think it was geared probably more towards maybe 8 or 9-year-old children, to read on their own, but it is quite thick, so I'm not sure. I think that once you get past kind of the issues in reading it and how simple it is, it was a good book. It was a good story. It really showed how the natives in the area survived in the cold, and how that relationship between helping settlers who are coming across pioneers, and kind of how the way of life for the First Nations changed as well. So it was a good story, just very simple. I think maybe more appropriate for an independent read than a read aloud maybe. Not sure. And the last read aloud we did was Children in the Industrial Revolution. Again, it's more of a picture book, but it gave a good idea of what life was like at that time. And all of these books went along with our Story of the World that we're doing, kind of as we go through the timeline and history. So then moving on to our audiobooks. So we finished listening to In the Reign of Terror, which I shared last month. It was a really good one. It was long. It was really long. And I think it gave a really good insight into the way that the wealthy or the royalists perceived the world at the time of the French Revolution. There's comments in there that are kind of funny and kind of sad about how weak women are and about how kind of simple-minded people below them are. But it gave a good idea of what happened at the time and how people survived and the bloodshed that happened as well. It is violent in some parts, but I think it was definitely worth it. Our whole family enjoyed the book, including my husband. I want to mention that. Then we moved on to Seaman, the Dog Who Explored the West by Lewis and Clark by Gail Langer Karwalski, is how you say it. We're not quite done this. I think we have about an hour and a half left, but so far it's been really good. Being a Canadian, I've heard of Lewis and Clark before and Sacagawea, mostly through just short mentions in history books or through like movies, Night at the Museum, things like that. But because I'm Canadian, in school we learned about the people who explored the Canadian West, not the American West. And so I didn't know a whole lot of details. So I found it very interesting. It's written from like the dog's, it's not the dog who's narrating, but he's involved in like everything as they go along. And I think that just adds a dimension to it that kind of is enjoyable to the story for kids and for adults as well. So it's written with dates included in it. So like from the journal entries of the explorers and the men there. So I just really enjoyed it. I'll let you know if anything changes in the last hour of it, but I think it's a really good story. Like it's a story, but you're learning a lot of history at the same time. And so I've really enjoyed it, and my family's really enjoyed it as well. So then moving on to our kids. So my 12-year-old read The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald. He said he'd give it about 4 out of 5. I haven't read this book, but it's about some goblins who live under a hill, I think, under a mountain, and princess and story. So there you go. I don't know much about that one. And then all my boys, my 3 older ones, so 12, 10, and 9, they love Archie comics, and so they read a lot of Archie comic books. I also had them read about Napoleon as an independent read this month. So there was from the Who Was series, there was the Osborne illustrated one, and then there was the Wicked History. And so they got to choose which one they wanted to read, and they all read from those books as independent reads. Then my 10-year-old, he's currently reading this book here, Brother Andrew, God Seeker Agent. This is from the Christian Heroes Then and Now series, and he's still reading that one right now. And then my 9-year-old has been reading the Hardy Boys series, and so he read books 3, 4, and 5. I know he's really been enjoying these books. He wants more, but our library is currently closed. And then my daughter, she's been reading this book. We picked this up at a secondhand book sale, Pioneer Sisters, and I thought she'd really enjoy it, and she has been enjoying it. There's some little pictures in here. And then she continues to read a lot of early readers and just kind of books that we have on our shelf, kind of bits and pieces here and there. So that brings me to me. So I read this book here, Keeping My Sister's Secrets by Breezy Marsh. And it's based on a true story of 3 sisters who are born in England in between the wars and very impoverished, and just kind of 3 sisters and how their lives are connected. It follows them through to pretty much adulthood. But even though they're sisters, they're completely different and they take different paths in life. I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. A lot about that kind of time and during the Second World War as well in this book, which I enjoyed. And then I read this book here, Hitler's Daughter by Jackie French. So I read this one, I was previewing it to read as a read aloud for our Story of the World next year. And it's really interesting. It's asked the question, what if Hitler had a daughter? And it's one of those books, it's quite short. Like it's quite short, quick read, and it's geared towards kids. So I think it's one of those books that has those like layers to it. You can read it and it can bring up a few questions, and it gives some basic kind of general, but somewhat gentle introduction to the war and what happened in Germany. But you can also go a lot deeper with it. There's a lot of ethical questions, a lot of questions like, if my father was Hitler, would that make me a bad person? How would that impact me? Or how would others perceive me? So kind of there's a lot of layers to it, a lot of questions. So I really enjoyed it. I'm gonna put it on our read aloud list for next year. I think my kids will like it. And again, it gives information about the Second World War without being extremely graphic or maybe too advanced for my younger kids. So that's what we read in March. I would love to know what you read, what you're reading right now, as well as if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them. Leave it in the comment section down below. Otherwise, I hope this finds you having a great day. Take care.